Hello everyone, in today's video I am going to share some important tips and tricks for IELTS listening module. Watch this video till the end and you will learn how to achieve 10 out of 10 in part 4. So the first tip is read the instruction carefully. Here is it one word or two or three words, but in this video it is one word only. And then read the title, the history of coffee, and try to read all the questions as soon as possible, and try to find and mark the keywords like this: the history of coffee in the Arab worlds. Then there was small scale trade in wild coffee from Ethiopia. Here Ethiopia is our keyword. Then 1522 coffee was approved in the Ottoman court. And then as a type of medicine, here medicine in this line 1522 Ottoman court and medicine. Then 1623 in Constantinople, the ruler ordered, okay, the ruler here, the ruler ordered the every coffee house, here coffee house and ruler ordered, okay. Then coffee arrives in Europe 17th century. Here 17th century, coffee shops were compared, okay, coffee shops, here shops, and compared to then they played an they means coffee shops, they played an important part in social and dash changes. Here changes, they means coffee shops played an important part in social and dash changes. Then coffee and European colonization. Here colonization, European powers established coffee plantations in their colonies. Here colonies. And then types of coffee. Here types of coffee were often named, okay, often named according to the dash they came from, okay, they came from. In Brazil and the Caribbean, here Brazil and the Caribbean, most cultivation dependent, okay, dependent on. Then in Java, coffee was used as a form of, okay. Then coffee became almost, okay, almost as important as, here as important as. Then the move towards the consumption, okay, consumption of dash in Britain. Here Britain did not also take place in the USA. Here in this line the keywords are actually consumption dash in Britain, actually Britain and USA. Then coffee in the 19th century. Here prices, okay, then prices, what coffee prices actually dropped because of improvements, okay, improvements in what, improvements in then industrial workers. Here industrial workers found coffee helped them to work at, here work at, okay. Then you need to try to predict the possible answers, actually like this. Here coffee arrives in Europe 17th century. Coffee shops were compared to what, compared to something, and guess what might be the possible answer. In that time coffee shops, in that time something such as library, university, playground was thought as important or is as similar as coffee shop. So here guess the keywords, guess the possible answers, guess the possible answer. So I think it might be library, it might be university, it might be playgrounds, it might be markets, such things might be the possible answers. So this is very important. I recommend you to try to predict all the answers, okay. Then here they played an important part in social and what, social and economical, maybe physical, maybe mental, maybe political. Okay, these actually might be the possible answers. Then types of coffee were often named according to the dash. Okay, according to the dash they came from, according to the what, according to the country, according to the region, according to the something actually. So try to predict the answer. Okay, then in Brazil and Caribbean, most cultivation dependent on something, dependent on what, dependent on people, dependent on laborers, dependent on foreigners, something that might be the possible answers. Okay, so now I am going to play the audio, and uh, so here I'm going to play the audio and try to answer all of these questions.
I'm going to talk about coffee and its importance both in economic and social terms. We think it was first drunk in the Arab world, but there's hardly any documentary evidence of it before the 1500s. Although, of course, that doesn't mean that people didn't know about it before then. However, there is evidence that coffee was originally gathered from bushes growing wild in Ethiopia, in the northeast of Africa. In the early 16th century, it was being bought by traders, and gradually its use as a drink spread throughout the Middle East. It's also known that in 1522, in the Turkish city of Constantinople, which was the center of the Ottoman Empire, the court physician approved its use as a medicine. By the mid-1500s, coffee bushes were being cultivated in the Yemen, and for the next 100 years, this region produced most of the coffee drunk in Africa and the Arab world. What's particularly interesting about coffee is its effect on social life. It was rarely drunk at home, but instead, people went to coffee houses to drink it. These people, usually men, would meet to drink coffee and chat about issues of the day. But at the time, this chance to share ideas and opinions was seen as something that was potentially dangerous. And in 1623, the ruler of Constantinople demanded the destruction of all the coffee houses in the city, although after his death, many new ones opened, and coffee consumption continued. In the 17th century, coffee drinking spread to Europe, and here too, coffee shops became places where ordinary people, nearly always men, could meet to exchange ideas. Because of this, some people said that these places performed a similar function to universities. The opportunity they provided for people to meet together outside their own homes and to discuss the topics of the day had an enormous impact on social life, and many social movements and political developments had their origins in coffeehouse discussions. In the late 1600s, the Yemeni monopoly on coffee production broke down, and coffee production started to spread around the world, helped by European colonization. Europeans set up coffee plantations in Indonesia and the Caribbean, and production of coffee in the colonies skyrocketed. Different types of coffee were produced in different areas, and it's interesting that the names given to these different types, like mocha or Java coffee, were often taken from the port they were shipped to Europe from. But if you look at the labor system in the different colonies, there were some significant differences. In Brazil and the various Caribbean colonies, coffee was grown in huge plantations, and the workers there were almost all slaves. But this wasn't the same in all colonies. For example, in Java, which had been colonized by the Dutch, the peasants grew coffee and passed a proportion of this on to the Dutch, so it was used as a means of taxation. But whatever system was used, under the European powers of the 18th century, coffee production was very closely linked to colonization. Coffee was grown in ever-increasing quantities to satisfy the growing demand from Europe, and it became nearly as important as sugar production, which was grown under very similar conditions. However, coffee prices were not yet low enough for people to drink it regularly at home, so most coffee consumption still took place in public coffee houses, and it still remained something of a luxury item. In Britain, however, a new drink was introduced from China and started to become popular, gradually taking over from coffee, although at first it was so expensive that only the upper classes could afford it. This was tea, and by the late 1700s it was being widely drunk. However, when the USA gained independence from Britain in 1776, they identified this drink with Britain, and coffee remained the preferred drink in the USA, as it still is today. So, by the early 19th century, coffee was already being widely produced and consumed. But during this century, production boomed, and coffee prices started to fall. This was partly because new types of transportation had been developed, which were cheaper and more efficient. So now, working people could afford to buy coffee. It wasn't just a drink for the middle classes. And this was at a time when large parts of Europe were starting to work in industries. And sometimes this meant their work didn't stop when it got dark. They might have to continue throughout the night. So the use of coffee as a stimulant became important. It wasn't just a drink people drank in the morning for breakfast. They were all
So basically this is the way actually you have to practice at home, and inshallah in few days you will get your deserved band score in listening part 4. So thanks for the watching.